Today's class. My name is Birgit Koopsen. I'm in the Netherlands and I am a brand ambassador for Gelli Arts. So today we're going to do a Gelli Arts class on making a Valentine's card with die cuts. And we're going to do a couple of prints to create paper for these die cuts. But actually this is also a great way to use your prints that you already have, and especially the prints that you maybe not like so much, because when you cut them up in smaller pieces, you will be amazed by how beautiful your papers look when they are in the shape of a heart or a circle or something like that. So yeah, let's turn the camera to my hands, and then I will show you what we are going to do today and what we are going to use. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a Valentine's card. And of course, for Valentine, we're going to use hearts. And as you can see, I have one card on which I did a little bit of sewing, and I also have two on which I didn't do the sewing, so that is optional. You don't have to do it. But if you like to and you have a sewing machine and you want to add that little bit of extra, then you can actually also do some sewing on your card, also adding a little bit of texture. So, and the fun part of this Valentine's card is that it has a little gift inside, and the gift is a little heart banner. So I have this little banner here made from die cut hearts, and it's very easy to make, and then you can put it inside of your folded card in the envelope, and when the receiver opens the card, then the banner will fall out, and of course that's a fun little extra surprise, and they can hang them wherever they want. So today we're going to use the 5x7 Gelli Arts Gel printing plate. I already have it here on my table. As you can see, I have my plate on a sheet of white paper. Let me put it nicely in the middle. On a sheet of white paper, and I applied the paper with a little bit of masking tape on my table so it doesn't move. And the reason I put my plate on a sheet of white paper is because the plate is transparent. If I would put it straight onto the table like this, then the colors I roll out on my plate might appear differently, because the paint is quite translucent when you roll it out in a thin layer. And then if you have your plate on a sheet of white paper, your colors will look the way as they actually are. So that's why I put it on white paper. But of course, that is totally personal. If you like to put your plate on a different surface, then that's fine too. So let me show you what I'm going to use today to print with. So I also have, of course, a whole lot of prints that I made in the past, like a whole stash of prints. And I use them for all kinds of projects. So I use them for as collage material or to create die cuts. And I have them all like in a big drawer. And then when I need something, I'll just take out the papers and then I can create die cuts from them. And of course, that's what you can do if you want to do a quick and easy card. You can just take some paper from your stash and create the card straight away, and you don't have to do any printing in that specific moment. But of course, we also want to do some printing in a gel printing class. So I will create a couple of prints showing you one or two fun techniques that are really nice for cards like this. So for instance, I really like prints that are made with, what is it called, lace. So what you see here, this heart where the little text is on, and also these two actually were cut from a print made with lace. So I'm going to show you how to create a print with lace. And also the papers that I have here, like the ones that I have from my stash, all have only paint on one side. And for the little banner, I need papers that are printed on both sides, because otherwise, if it like twirls around, then you will have the white background, back side or reverse side. And so you need to print on both sides to get a nice little banner. So I have some lace here that I'm going to use to print. And let me see, I have another tool here that I'm going to use to create a print. And this is made from hot glue. So this is a hot glue stamp. What I basically did is I just drew circles with my hot glue gun on a piece of cardboard, and now I can use it as a stamp or a texture tool on my gel plate. So there is also a video available on the Gelli Arts and Michael's YouTube channel about creating your own hot glue stamps. So if you're interested in that, then you can scroll down the playlist and find the video on that. So here I have some papers that already have some paint on one side. I'm just going to use these as the base for my print. So I don't have to do all of the printing, because I also have to do the reverse side. So I have a couple here that already have some paint on them. The paints I'm going to use today are probably mostly Amsterdam, and I also have some Liquitex. So these are both also available at Michael's. These are the student grade quality of Amsterdam, Talents Amsterdam, and Liquitex, and they are really nice paints to use on the gel plate. They are have a really nice consistency. They have enough pigments to have bright colors, even if you roll out a thin layer. And I really also like the drying time. For me, it's perfect. The time it takes to dry. That could be different for you, because the drying time depends a lot on the circumstances in your room or even in your area. So here in the Netherlands, for instance, it's how I don't know the English word anymore. Humid, a very humid air. So, and it's not really warm, so my paints don't dry very fast. Of course, in winter, when I turn on the heating, then it dries a little bit faster. So depends on what you want to do and how much time you need, and how the air in your room is, how fast it dries. So if it dries too fast, if you need more working time, you can add a slow dry blending medium if you like. This makes your paint dry slower, so you have more time if you want to do multiple textures, for instance, in your paint. So I usually use this when I work with a bigger plate and I have a bigger area that I want to work with. So I probably won't need it today. So first I want to do a print, as I said, with the lace. And as you can see, my lace has a few layers of paint on it already, but it picks up only a little bit of paint, only a thin layer of paint. So you can use this many times before it clogs up, and you will lose the details. Actually, when you do a couple of prints with it, it only gets better at first because it gets more sturdy and easier to work with. So first we're going to do that. So I'm going to roll out some paint. Let me see. I want to do my lace on this background, so I need a little bit of contrast, but I don't want it to be like too much. I think maybe this will be nice. So I'm going to use my brayer. I have here my Speedball soft rubber brayer. I really like the soft rubber, but that's very personal. If you like a more hard brayer, then you can also really well use the Gelli Arts brayer that I have. Let me see, I should have one here. Well, I have the handle, but it doesn't have the roller inside. But the Gelli Arts one is a hard rubber brayer. So yeah, they are quite equally, but it's very personal why you would like the one instead of the other. But yeah, this is my personal favorite. Now I'm going to roll out a thin layer of paint. And it's always important that your layer is really thin because your texture tool will only be able to pull up a certain amount of paint. And if your layer of paint is like really thick, then you won't really see the pattern or the texture in the paint because not enough paint was picked up from the layer. So as you can see, I make it really nice, thin and smooth. And then I roll off my paint on some scrap paper that I have on the side. Now I'm going to place my lace on top. And with lace, it's very important that you don't move it because the details are so fine. If you move it, you lose those details. So what I like to do is I take a piece of chipboard, or you could also use an acrylic block for stamping. And I put that on top of the lace so I can push it down into the paint without touching the paint and with less chance of moving it on top of my paint. Now I'm going to lift it up and hopefully it picked up enough texture to create a nice print. And now I'm just going to place my already painted paper on top and place a sheet of copier paper on top to really push it down. And my feeling says I used a little bit too much paint, and what I actually explained to you about having a thin layer, because otherwise you will not get a nice texture. That might actually happen now. So then I can show straight away how it's not done. So do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, so here you can see it's almost a solid layer of paint. There's not a lot of detail. And that's because there was too much paint left on the plate. So my lace actually did not pick up enough texture, not pick up enough paint to create a nice texture. I even have paint left on my plate. And I don't know if you can see it. So you can see it now. Quite a lot of texture is left on the plate. So if I had used the right amount of paint, then my plate would have been clean. So that means that I used way too much paint. So sometimes when you start printing, you kind of got to get into it, like do 2 or 3 prints to find out, to just feel again how much paint you need. And also that can depend on the circumstances in your room, that today might be a little bit different than yesterday or tomorrow. So Yeah, I usually say if you are starting to print with a new session, then don't do the one that you want to be perfect in the very first round. Just feel how the paint is reacting that day, and so don't print on your most pretty paper the first print, because you might end up with a disappointment. So now what I can do is pick up the paint that's left on the plate on a clean sheet of paper. Oh, actually, I am going to do that on the reverse side of one of these. So this is not wet enough anymore to print it directly on the paper. If I put the paper on top of it now, it will probably not lift up any paint. As you can see, the paint is not coming off anymore because it has dried. I can pick it up with a new layer of paint. So instead of picking up paint straight away from the plate while it's still wet, you can also choose to let it dry on the plate before picking it up, and that can also be helpful if the paint is drying faster than you expected. And then sometimes it's better to leave it on the plate until it's completely dry than trying to pick it up straight away, because if there are any areas that are already dry, you will not be able to pick up those areas. So you have to know for sure that all of the paint on the entire plate is still wet, or otherwise it's better to leave the paint to dry, and then you can add a new layer of paint, a thin, nice and thin layer of paint. And if you have watched more of my videos, you will know that I keep repeating that your layer of paint really needs to be thin. I'm going to print on the reverse side of this one. Your layer of paint really has to be thin, otherwise your paper or your texture tools will not be able to pull up enough of the paint. So if you're not completely sure that you use the right amount of paint and you are afraid that you maybe use too much paint, and you might not be able to pick up all of the paint straight away, what you can do is leave the paper on the plate until everything is dry. So normally if I would do just for me gel printing, then I would just put the paper on there and lift it up straight away. And if I have the right amount of paint, a really thin layer, then everything will come off. But and if that doesn't happen, then that's fine with me. If there are areas in the paint that don't come up, then that's fine too, especially when I make, for instance, collage material or something like that. But if I want to be absolutely sure that my paper will pick up all of the paint from the plate, then I have to make sure that everything is completely dry. Because what happens is when the paint dries, it sticks to the paper. And it doesn't matter how many layers they are, like all the layers of paint and the paper will stick together as if the paper is glued onto the paint. But the gel plate is made to release the paint. So whatever happens, the dry paint will always come up with the paper, unless your paper is not completely dry. So if there are certain areas in your paper that are still a bit moist and other areas are already dry, then your paper is more likely to tear, and parts of it may stay behind on the plate. So you have to be sure that everything is completely dry if you wait for the paint to dry. So now I can pull it up, and as you can see, my plate is completely dry, clean, and my print is actually has quite some detail. Actually, I didn't expect it to be this good. but you can definitely see that I used lace to create this print, right? So the print I made before, this one, so this is really not good enough for me, but what I can do, I can always add another layer, right? When you do gel printing and you don't like what you have, you can always add another layer. So I'm just going to add another layer to this one.
Birgit, I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt, Birgit. We had a question about if at some point you could show how you like to use the slow drying medium.
Sure, I can just do that in this print because it doesn't matter when I use it, when I pull the print straight away. It doesn't matter if I add it or I don't add it. So I can just use it and show you how to do that. So I'm going to print on this one, and I will use the slow dry blending medium, which is, by the way, from Liquitex, also available at Michael's. So what you would normally do if you paint, when you paint, you would mix the paint in a cup with the slow dry medium, and then there is something on the bottle that says how many parts of paint you have to mix with how many parts of slow dry blending medium. But I don't want to do that mixing in a cup, because then I always have leftover paint and it's in a cup, and I don't want to have all these cups standing around and drying, and then I have to throw away the paint. So what I like to do is just add one or two small drops of slow dry medium on my plate and roll it out. So I have this very thin layer of slow dry medium. Then I add the paint and also roll out the paint. And while I roll out the paint, it will mix with the slow dry medium, and you will see that the paint looks a little bit differently while it's not completely mixed. It's you have to roll for a little while to get it actually really mixed up. But this way you don't waste any paint and you don't waste any slow dry medium. So that's why I like to do it this way. Okay, I'm going to try again, and maybe I'll even take some more paint off the plate. Taking paint off the plate is very easy by using a clean brayer. So the brayer is cleaned off on the cleanup paper, and then go over it again, and then the brayer will pick up paint from the plate. So I have a really thin layer right now, and I'm going to use my chipboard again to push it down. And hopefully this time I will get a better texture in my paint. I'm just going to push one more time. So with this, what you also can do is leave the lace on the plate a little bit longer until the paint kind of starts to dry before you pull it off. But then, of course, you also have to wait for the rest of the paint to dry and pick it up with a new layer, because some parts might be completely dry already. That's not what I want, and probably is not going to happen very fast because I used the slow dry medium. But I think you can see already that I have way more texture this time than I had in my previous print. So now I'm going to put this on top and rub it again. Make sure I push it down everywhere so it touches the plate everywhere. If your paper is not touching the paint and the plate, of course, then you will not be able to pick up any of that paint. So, and again, I could leave it on and for everything to dry, but I will just pull it straight away because I'm pretty sure I have the right amount of paint. And there you go. This one is much better than the first one. So, and still, this would not be, I would not call this a perfect print. I mean, the texture could be much better. It should be actually somewhere between these two to be a perfect print. But the fun thing is when you do the die cutting and you end up with smaller pieces like this one, then that doesn't matter so much anymore how perfect your prints are, because it's more about just texture and color than that you can actually see what you use to do the printing. Like for instance, this one, I don't know if you can tell what this is, but this was actually an onion net that I used to print with. And but that's not really important. It's about the texture and the feel and the colors that are on there that are important. And that's exactly what I mean with using the prints that you don't like so much, because then you have some good use for them, and otherwise you might never use them or throw them out. And if you do die cutting, then a lot of prints can be used that you would normally not use. So I need at least 2 more prints to do the die cutting for the little banner. So I have to keep working, otherwise we won't be able to make it in time. So now I'm going to use this one. And again, it's all about the texture. So I'm going to print on the red. And I think instead of using a darker color, I'm going to use lighter colors. And if I use lighter colors on a darker background, I have to make sure that my colors are opaque, because otherwise my the color on my print that's already there will change the color that I print on top. It will show through the layer of new paint. So if you want to use lighter colors on a darker background, you have to have a look at your paint if it's opaque. So if you have more professional paints, then there is a little sign on the tube and here also, and it's also on, for instance, I think I have like a golden bottle here, and it also has the little square. So if the square is black, it means that you have like an opaque paint. And if the square is like open, like this one, that means that it is a translucent paint. And if it has a half full square like this one, then it's a semi-translucent paint. So I don't really care about my the opacity of my paints in general, but if you, as I said, want to do lighter colors on darker colors, then it might give a better result than when you're not paying attention to that. Oh, by the way, this is like a Winsor and Newton Galleria. I didn't mention them before, but these are also available at Michael's. So I'm just going to roll out 2 colors, and I'm just going to kind of mix them. And then I'm going to use this as a stamp and stamp into the paint. And my tool will pick up paint from the plate, and you can try to kind of dab off the paint that's on the tool, because the more paint builds up on the texture tool, the less it will take up from the plate. So if you do not kind of clean your tool, then you will get more and more areas that are not completely showing open. open areas where the texture is, and I'm just going to do a crazy pattern and then print it on top. And now I realize I didn't do it on purpose, but I realized that I have the same colors on the reverse side as I have on the first print. Now this is not pulling up enough. So if I didn't have to do this within the hour, I would probably now leave the paper on the plate, because I saw when I lifted it up that not enough paint is coming up, which means again that I used too much paint. But I don't have that much time, so I'm going to lift it up anyway. Well, not too bad. Actually, I kind of like how this looks. It's almost like it's a bunch of roses or something, and there is not even that much paint left on the plate, so that's pretty okay. And then I'm going to print on the reverse side of this one, because I want those two pieces to do the little banner. So let me see, what color am I going to use? I'm just going to do what is this, like a violet and a darker blue. And I'm just going to roll them out again. Going to make sure that I do use less paint this time. So if you want to and clean this more better in between the printing, then you could have like a paper towel on hand and rub off some of that paint while you're printing. But I'm just going to go with this now. But you probably can already see that the open areas actually, the paint was taken away completely here, which means that I have a better layer of paint on this time than I had in the previous print. Also, if you wait a tiny little bit before pushing your texture tools into the paint, when the paint already starts to dry a little bit, then it gets more sticky, and you will also lift up more paint from the plate. The downside of that, of course, is that you have to wait again until everything is dry before you can add a second layer to pick up the paint, because if it starts to dry already, so you are able to pick up that sticky paint, then there are also areas that are like completely dry. So I have to wait now before I can pull this one, or I can speed it up a little. And what I could do now is use a hairdryer to speed it up, and then but only on cold setting. There is no heat allowed on the gel plate, and I have only right now I only have a heat gun here, so I'm not going to use that. But a hairdryer on cold setting would definitely also speed up the drying time. But yeah, the thinner your layer is, of course, the quicker it will dry. And I am pretty sure that I can already add the pickup layer. I'm just going to roll off any excess paint from my brayer, because I want to add a lighter color, and I don't want to mix that with any paint that might be left on my brayer. So I make sure that I have rolled off all of the wet paint from my brayer. And let's see, how about a bright? No, I'm not going to do a bright. I want to keep it in about the same color scheme, so I'm going to use the pink again, the baby pink. Rolling out a thin layer again. And you can see how thin it is, that you can already see the texture that's underneath appear. But you also have to be careful if you work with layers this thin that you don't over brayer, because if you brayer too long and the paint starts to dry a little bit already, it will also stick to the brayer and you will actually pick up all of the paint from the plate again. So if you keep brayering, at some point you will pick up large areas of paint. So you have to know when to stop. So that's also a matter of trial and error. Let me see. Yeah, I think this worked perfectly. Beautiful. At least that's my opinion. I like textures like this. Maybe you don't like them at all, but at least you know how you can create texture in whatever way you want. So basically, anything that can create that has a texture can create texture in paint. So if you look around, anything with a texture can be used on the gel plate. It can go as crazy as the bottom of your shoes or whatever you can come up with that has any texture. So I'm just going to put my plate aside and make some hearts. And I decided, I have not done this before, I think in a video, but I decided to actually try and get on video the die cutting of the hearts. So I'm using this one, and this is also from Michael's. It's Sizzix Thinlits, and so you get like this whole pack of hearts in a variety of sizes. What I like about it is that you can cut from your entire paper at the same in one go, so you don't have to like punch out a lot of separate hearts. You just, let me see, get them out. So I'm not going to do the tiniest ones because I will not be able to use them for the banner at all, and maybe not even for the card. So I'm using the little bit bigger ones, and then it has like the side that has like a thicker outline is the what's cutting. So I'm going to put these with the cutting side down on my paper. I'm just going to fill my entire paper. And I really hope that my paper is dry enough, because if your paint and your paper are not completely dry yet, then this might not cut very well, because the paper will be softer when it's not completely dry, and these cut always better through harder dried paper. Okay, I'm just going to put these aside. So I'm using the Sizzix machine here, and probably you will not probably find this one anymore because it's a very old one. So this specific one is probably no longer available. But of course, that is, it's like any Sizzix machine, but you could also use like a Cuttlebug or Spellbinders. It doesn't really matter which one you use.
Birgit, we have a question.
Yes.
She wanted to know, can you use bottled craft paint or does it have to be the thicker paint from the tubes?
So in general, I would not recommend like the really craft paints. I would go for the more professional acrylic paints, and that doesn't mean you need to have the most expensive ones. Like I said, I'm using the student grade paints, and they are actually not that expensive if you see how much more you can print with them, because they have more pigments and the consistency is different, and you need only a little bit of paint to get really nice prints. And if you use like the real craft paints, they don't have that much pigments, and then your prints will just not be as pretty and satisfying as you want them to be. So personally, I would say pay a little bit more for if you can pay what you can afford, and in that matter, the most expensive one that you can afford, basically, because your prints will absolutely be better. The craft paints usually just don't have enough pigments to get a really nice result, and especially if they are really thin. Um, like in bottles, they are usually thinner, and then you already also spread them on the plate. You can probably imagine that if there are not a lot of pigments in there, that you will just spread them and you will get very translucent layers, and your colors will not be as bright and deep and vibrant. So you really don't need the most expensive ones, because they also go a longer way. The student grade paints go longer. You need less than when you use the really cheap ones. Okay, here you can see that I have now double-sided hearts that I can use for my banner. And also you can see that it's not really recognizable anymore that I used lace. Maybe, yeah, of course we know, but if you wouldn't know, you might not recognize it, but it doesn't really matter because they are just pretty hearts, right? And then I also have a little box here with a lot of hearts that I cut out for previous projects or from leftover papers. So what I usually do is I keep all my hearts, and then when I want to make a card, what I do to create a card like this is I use my cleaner papers for the background. So maybe you can tell that these papers where the hearts are on, they are just cleanup papers like these. So the papers that I use to clean off my brayer, I keep them. Let me see if I have some more here on my little pile. So I have this pile of copier paper next to my gel plate. I use that to clean off my brayer every time when it gets too wet or too many layers, to be able to roll off more paint like this one. As you can see, it's still a bit wet. I put it aside, but when it's dry, it goes back on the pile until I have papers that I kind of like, and of which I think, oh, that would be maybe a nice background for a card or even to print on even more. And then I cut them up. I cut them up in the right size for card making, like these. And here's a smaller one. And here's another smaller one. And I'm going to use these and my die cut hearts to create these cards. And that's what I said. If you want to make a really quick card, you don't need much time, because you take a piece of cleaner paper and the little box with any hearts that you or whatever shape. I mean, you can also cut out circles. For instance, here I have circles too, or stars, or whatever you would like to die cut. And then you have a large variety, and all you have to do is get a card. Let me see if I have a folded card here. Yes, I do. So I have, oh, I also have one with already a background on it, and a bigger one that can hold a background like this, or maybe like this. And then I just go and through my hearts, I search through my hearts, and I find hearts that are nice and contrasting with my background. I'm going to use this one too, because that's a different color. That's maybe nicer to have them to show you how I built up those cards. So I'm looking for nice contrast. And I have a lot of hearts, so there will always be some hearts that are in the right color for me to use on my card.
Birgit, where do you recommend getting the die cut machine that you have?
I suppose Michael's has a die cutting has die cutting machines like Sizzix or Spellbinders or Cuttlebug or any die cutting brand. I'm sure I put them on the list. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I'll double check now to see if I can find them for anyone in the comments who's interested, and I'll put it in there.
Okay. Thank you. So I think that explains pretty well how I create my cards. So what I really like to do is take a couple of hearts and cut off, let me see, cut off a little bit at the side or maybe at the top or at the bottom, so I can line them up on the side of the card to make it look as if it falls off the card, like I did here on the side, and here a little bit here and a little bit here, to make it feel as if it's kind of going on outside of the card. So I just use any adhesive that I have on hand. I like to use double-sided tape runners from Scrapbook Adhesives, for instance. They are also available at Michael's. But if you prefer to work with a fluid adhesive like a tacky glue or something, then of course that will also work. And this way you just keep going until you are satisfied with your card. And then if you want to, you can add a sentiment, you can add letter sticker or word stickers, or you can cut, I also like to cut words from old books, make up my own sentiments and put them on the cards. But I also want to try and show you how I do the banner on my sewing machine. So I am pretty sure that this is all clear for you. But I'm not sure if I will be able to put my sewing machine here underneath the camera, but I'm going to try. So that's maybe going to work. So I really can't recommend you on a sewing machine. I don't think, I have no idea actually, but I don't think Michael's has sewing machines, but maybe they do. I actually don't know, but of course I have a Dutch one, and so that doesn't have any use if I tell you which one it is. But I just have my normal threading in there, like a black thread. And the fun thing is that if you, I'm just going to see if I can move my camera a bit so you can see it better. So when you just start sewing, you can just keep sewing, even though there is nothing to hold the thread. So even if there's no paper or there's no fabric, you can keep sewing and just push the thread here at the back. So you can make that little banner. And this is probably going to be a little bit of noise, but I'm going to do it. So now I wait a little bit before. Oops, that's maybe a little bit too long. And I have the wrong stitch. So I just, as you can see, what is it called? Not pushing, but I can't, I don't remember the word. I'm pulling the thread, and then I keep pulling. Well, there's no new paper yet. And then I add another heart. And I pull a little bit more and add another heart. Okay, and then I'm going to stop and pull it off. Let me see where it is. There we go. And here I have a little banner. And I had it on the wrong stitch. I wanted it to be just a normal stitch. But even with the zigzag stitch, it works. And that's why I wanted them to be double-sided, because this is just going inside that card. And then, of course, when people open the card, the banner is going to fall out. Okay, are there any questions right now that I can answer before I leave you? Let me see. Oh, I see somebody saying if we don't have a sewing machine, we could glue them onto a string. Of course, you could do that. Or you could use the hearts that are not double-sided and glue them back to back like this with a little string in between. That, of course, would also work. This is shaking. Okay. Do you use a glue stick to adhere the gel print to the card? Oh, I usually use double-sided adhesive, and I don't know if I have one here. I have one here, like, for instance, the Easy Dots scrapbook adhesives. Michaels has scrapbook adhesives, glue dots and strips, tape runners, and I really like to use that to glue my background to my card. Let me see, I can actually glue this one to the card. I really like how easy it is to just add the double-sided tape. And sometimes I do a little bit in the middle. And then I like to have my card a little bit bigger than my background, because I like that white border, and I'm eyeballing it now, but I'm trying to get it in the middle. So I have that little white border, and then I can put my little banner inside before I put it in the envelope. Okay, let me see. Maybe we can turn the camera again, and I'm going to see if I see any questions right now. Oh yeah, I remember that mini paper crafting sewing machine. I had it for scrapbooking. That was a fun thing, but it would be perfect for little projects like this. Oh, and I see somebody has good use now for a huge pile of copier paper. Brother Scan and Cut is also a really great machine if you know how to work with computers, because I am so not a computer person that I keep doing it with the normal die cuts. Okay, I think this is it for today. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this class, and I hope you got some new ideas and a way to use up your stash of gel prints. And I will be back next month with a new class. I hope to see you again then. And until then, I wish you all the best. Bye bye.